Chat. There's this really, really good video apparently that got dropped the other day, or not the other day, a couple weeks ago from Action. Action makes really, really good videos. They don't typically make the slop video of like, oh, OW bad, rivals good, you know? They're actually pretty good at these. Like they're typically well informed. I haven't watched like a ton of their stuff. I've only watched a few, but like on average, they're pretty good. So they had this video come out a couple weeks ago, and said Blizzard accidentally created their worst enemy. It's almost got 1 million views, and it got popped in my Hot Topics channel, which is typically for Flats TV, like non-Overwatch, non-Rivals content. But I was like, damn, that looks good. So I saved it for another day. So I saved it for today. So let's watch it. Let's see what's going on. Blizzard accidentally created their worst enemy.
Blizzard Castle, former home of King Bobby Kotick, now brought to ruin. When insatiable greed caused Blizzard Castle to fall, the pieces that once made it great had to go somewhere. Many who were lost found a new home over there, taking the pieces of a once great kingdom and turning it into an empire the likes of which we've never seen. This is the untold story of Activision Blizzard and how they accidentally created one of their greatest enemies. The year is 2008, when Blizzard Entertainment was the golden boy of gaming. They were known for putting their players first and taking a really long time to ensure their games were good. Really good. Unsurprisingly, this rockstar reputation earned them a cult following, and every budding game developer during this time wanted to be like Blizzard. But on the horizon, stormy weather was blowing in, announcing the arrival of evil, House Activision, led by one man, Bobby Kotick. On a rampage, Activision's business model was based on consuming the souls of their enemies. And by this, I mean they would buy out small, struggling game studios and absorb them into the Activision brand. They were budding development teams with big ideas, and Activision would promise them funding to realize their dreams.
What else can I help you with?
Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Call of Duty. Activision was even making games for a little comic book company called Marvel. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Oh,
for now,
I didn't know
Activision was a powerhouse in the gaming industry with an insatiable appetite. And Bobby Kotick was on the hunt for bigger fish. Which brings us to July 8th, 2008. A day that will live in infamy. Bobby wanted to buy Blizzard Games. He saw their perfect track record, their adoring fans, and, of course, their World of Warcraft subscription service, which was earning tens of millions of dollars a month. Bobby wanted a piece. So he approached Blizzard's owner, Vivendi Games, asking for a price tag. Unwilling to simply sell one of their biggest cash cows, Vivendi instead negotiated a merger between the two companies. Vivendi would keep a majority stake in Blizzard, and Bobby would add a powerful piece to his arsenal.
Damn good deal.
Yes, it was, and one that sent shockwaves throughout the gaming industry.
You what?
The fact that that was in 2008 is crazy.
Two titans coming together, about to show the world what they were truly
Is it just me that feels like it was later? Like it feels like it was like 2012 or 2013.
capable of. Thus, Blizzard Castle was created. Their first move, under their new name, was a big one, brokered by Bobby Kotick himself. World of Warcraft was a huge game not just in North America, but around the world, with one of the biggest regions for the game being China. Unfortunately, China is notoriously
That's when their
strict
influence
about
started to
distributing
show?
rights to foreign
True.
companies. Activision hadn't had much luck getting around this roadblock, but Blizzard did. World of Warcraft was published and hosted on servers courtesy of Chinese company The Nine. When Activision and Blizzard merged, Bobby was essentially gifted this inroad into China on a silver platter.
This is so funny because if you're not a knower, as a knower, Overwatch got banned in China for a little bit because so to operate in China, the only way an outside company is allowed to operate in China is you have to partner with a Chinese company. Overwatch / Blizzard / Activision Blizzard was partnered with a company in China. And basically the deal went south because they were creating a WoW clone, and Activision Blizzard was really, really upset. And they went full nuclear. Like they they like literally put out a document, like a dissolution document, and it essentially said, F you. They trashed the whole office. You know what's funny? You know, and for the way if I'd be a fly on the wall, the way it probably went and the way it probably happened is probably a lot of the Activision higher ups were probably very aggressive to them and very disrespectful with the way they they went at it. Because like technically, if they were actually stealing their IP, they're not going to be upset about it, or they're not going to be happy about it. But it probably was so bad that, and that was at the time Bobby was still in at Activision Blizzard at the time. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a lot of the same people that just kind of tried to steamroll it through and probably tried to like strong arm them, and that's why it went so nuclear. I bet it wasn't just like a no, you shouldn't do this. Like we'll see you in court. It was probably like a disrespect thing. That would be my guess.
The 9 wouldn't be in the picture for very long. The Wrath of the Lich King expansion for WoW had some, unsavory content that the Chinese censors didn't really like, and they put a 2-year embargo on the game's release. Eventually, the 9 and Activision Blizzard broke up over the whole situation, but
wait, sorry, I missed that part while I was thanking subs. One more time?
Expansion for WoW had some, unsavory content that the Chinese censors didn't really like, and they put a 2-year embargo on the game's release. Eventually, the 9 and Activision Blizzard broke up over the whole situation, but not to worry, because they quickly found a new distributor, the Shanghai-based company NetEase. This partnership would flourish over the next few years. WoW would remain one of the biggest games in China, and NetEase would help Blizzard develop their games.
Wait, no skellies are allowed in Chinese culture? Is that really what it is? I was just thinking to myself, like, what was so bad there?
Things were amicable now. Eventually, way down the line, the partnership would take a most unexpected turn. For now, business was booming. The free money machines were printing money. The shareholders were happy with.
Yo, does anyone know why, off the top of their head, why is skeletons not allowed? No skull and crossbow as well? Do you know off the top of your head? It's an omen? Really? I figured it was a culture thing. Yeah, I figured that. But I was just like, what's the meaning? In China, skeleton means death and bad luck. Isn't like their numbers also like that? Like, isn't 8 a number for like wealth or fortune? And then like 4 is a number for death? Something like that? You really don't want to know why I know that. You should look at the last 3 numbers that for the trade war tariffs that were put on the US from China. There was 3 numbers that were put. It was 1, 2nd, and there's the final 3rd one. You should see what those 3 numbers are.
Their shares. What more could you possibly want? Oh, right, the well-being of the players. That wasn't on Bobby Kotick's checklist. Ever since the merger, Blizzard had been adding in some mechanics to their games that felt shady, borderline exploitative. First was World of Warcraft mounts becoming more expensive, and more egregiously, providing in-game conveniences. Next was the Diablo 3 auction house, which made it very hard to not spend real money to beat high-level endgame content. These newfangled microtransactions were sketching people out, and it felt like Activision's money-first, fun-later business model was worming its way into Blizzard's game development. As Blizzard North co-founder,
the horse that changed the world. One horse made more than like all of StarCraft or something like that.
They think with their wallets first. The year is now 2014. Greed was starting to affect the company in very real ways. After a string of poor releases, Marvel opted not to renew their contracts with Activision. At the same time, Blizzard employees were seeing the shift in company culture and looking for opportunities elsewhere. At the confluence of these two rivers was a man named Jay Ong, who left the company in 2014 to work for Marvel Games. At the time, Marvel was, as we mentioned, known for making some pretty mediocre games. After all of their work was outsourced and was primarily developed to release alongside their feature films. But Jay Ong had a vision. Although Marvel was still small and struggling, he made the choice to pledge his allegiance to a new kingdom, telling his former boss the Marvel IP needs a better home, to which he received a smug response, "Good luck finding your unicorn." This challenge would prove fateful for Blizzard. From here on, Jay Ong began building, brick by brick, a Marvel Games that was about to enter an era of success which it had never seen before. Learning from experience, Jay Ong was driven by one core principle: obsession with quality. Jay Ong implemented new strategies including only working with the very best partners who also cared about quality, removing restrictions which hindered them from making the best games, and giving them creative freedom. In his own words, quote, "They don't have to meet some artificial date. We give them time. We initiate projects far earlier than we used to. Great products require time to make. They have room to breathe creatively." In short,
oh my god. This is literally the most classic example of like really passionate person wants to make the best product possible, works under hyper billionaire / profit driven first, says I care about quality versus your ideology. That person tells you to go f yourself, and then in long term, they win.
People were allowed to try new
Oh
things,
my
and
God.
failure was seen as learning. In the years to come, Marvel games faced some growing pains, including flops of their own, but it was part of the process. Jae Ong was fostering an environment where creatives could do their best work, and whispers started to spread of a game-making paradise. Meanwhile, Blizzard was struggling. After the rocky launch of Diablo 3, Blizzard had 2 real flops in a row. The first was the cancellation of their secretive MMO, Titan, which was postured to be the successor of World of Warcraft. Titan's development started in 2007, and over the years, countless Blizzard employees were sent to work on the project. But as the game languished in development hell, blame fell on the execs for not making any meaningful decisions to get the game off the ground. And after 6 years of time and resources...
Yeah, I want to read that first sentence, by the way. Blizzard employees have gone on the record about Titan in the past, including designer Jeff Kaplan, who claimed we failed horrifically in every way. In every way the project can fail, it was devastating. During DICE 2017, Kaplan detailed Blizzard's road from Titan to Overwatch. The team for Titan reportedly consisted of well over 100 developers. While much is still unknown about Titan, reports indicated Titan was a sci-fi MMO set on the near future version of Earth. Regardless of Titan's fate, Overwatch became a highly successful hero shooter. In our Overwatch review, we called the game amazing, saying Overwatch is an incredible achievement in multiplayer shooter designs. It bobs and weaves almost perfectly between being the quick adrenaline hit you might want after a long day of work and the thoughtful, strategic multiplayer experience that becomes the center of evening-long binges with friends. It ultimately becomes IGN's Game of the Year in 2016. Does that sound like a game today? That's out? Sounds like Rivals. And I'll tell you right here, it's right here. It bobs and weaves almost perfectly between the quick fix adrenaline hit you might want after a long day of work and also thoughtful strategic multiplayer experience. And when I say by that, I mean it's a little bit more of a simple version of what Overwatch is today, right? Overwatch is so complicated now. It's basically a solved game, and that's why hero bans is going to be such a good thing for it. But like, you know what's funny? A lot of people argue and talk about like how Rivals isn't as good as Overwatch because it's not as a complex of game and it doesn't require as much strategy, right? Because like basically they have big ult, you hit support ult, right? It's like, it's very simple where it's like they have Hella ult, right? I save Luna ult, force Hella ult, I save team, boom, you win game. Overwatch doesn't work like that anymore. It's almost become too complicated in that aspect. And so unless you're like unless you either play super casually and don't care, or you hyper sweat it all the time, it just over time becomes almost like too hard for you. And that's not like a bad thing. It's like, you know what I mean? Like games will develop and grow over time. It's almost impossible to ever have that happen. But I want to point that out because I've seen a lot of Overwatch people over the last few months use that as a way to criticize Rivals and say, oh, Rivals isn't good. It's like a babied version. It's like a dumbed down version. It's like, yeah, so was Overwatch when it first started. Give it 2 years, I bet Rivals becomes almost maybe not a solved game, but it'll become closer to a solved game, and it becomes more and more complicated depending on what route they go. So it's very interesting. And this is like, that right there is what is that juice that people love.
Blame fell.
I don't even know if it's possible for a game to keep it for forever. We'll find out. But yeah,
for not making any meaningful decisions to get the game off the ground. And after 6 years of time and resources spent, Titan was internally cancelled in 2013. The project would ultimately cost Blizzard $80 million, and many veterans...
Oh, actually, you make a point. It isn't that simple at all, though. You don't always have to support ult or even useful support characters, so you sometimes needs to improvise. Strange counters to Hela or Magneto catching Iron Man with 1 or 2 ways. It's only simple as your creativity allows. Exactly. But here we are now in April talking about those things. When it was December, it was much more, holy shit, all you need is a Luna ult, right? Boom. Like, that's it. You're good to go. The game will get more complicated over time as people figure things out. But Overwatch was the same way. That was the point I'm trying to make. Like, you're absolutely correct. And like, as people learn and as people get better and as things progress, you'll start to become more and more complicated. And you'll need to learn all those complications. What I'm trying to explain is that Rivals hasn't hit that point yet, and that's why people can come home from work and just hop on and have a good time with their friends for hours. Overwatch, it feels like sometimes you have to like keep up with the meta and watch guides and not guides, but like practice and VOD review and like you have to be keeping up with everything at all times or else you fall behind, you know?
Friends who were stuck working on the project were completely demoralized. Following this, in 2015, Blizzard released their answer to League of Legends, but it wasn't the game they wanted to make. They wanted
Wait,
to
it's my
use
Reinhardt skin!
Dota, which was based on the Warcraft 3 mod that grew like wildfire over the past decade. But Valve already hired the creator of the mod to make a game like that for them and trademarked Dota 2 a few years earlier. Failing legal action to block the trademark, Blizzard was forced to use a different name, thus creating Heroes of the Storm. But the mobile market was already too saturated, and Heroes of the Storm simply could not compete. With the cancellation of Titan followed by the failure of Heroes of the Storm, Blizzard needed something, anything, to get their wheels back on track. Creativity and morale were at an all-time low, but with what little they had left in the tank, they decided to give it their all. And it's a good thing they did, because they struck gold.
We are compassion.
Remember that?
Chills.
Remember when the first Overwatch cinematic was released? When
Chills.
Mercy came down and everyone was like, wow, this is it. This is gonna save gaming. Us too.
Hey, we watched Marathon earlier today. I was not there'll be a Flats TV video about it if you didn't see it. I was not a huge fan of the gameplay itself. I actually was just mostly saying like, hey, I don't think this will be for me. I'll still play it, but like basically boiled down to like, I don't think this is going to be for me, but I'll still play it. I'll try it. I want to give it a shot. And then I watched the cinematic trailer that they had, and I, within 20 minutes, went from, I don't know if I want to, this is going to be for me, to, holy shit, this looks awesome. Funny how cinematics do that, right? Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
It was glorious. Overwatch was fun, dynamic, unique. It was critically acclaimed and won multiple Game of the Year awards. It was a reminder to all of us what Blizzard was capable of, and that they still had that magic in them to create legitimately good games. Then, when we thought it couldn't get any better, they announced the Overwatch League, the first internationally franchised esports league in history. It was going to be the NFL of gaming competition. Teams tied to cities, fans wearing jerseys, players flown all over the world.
Overwatch League, Season 1, Season 2, peak. They lost the plot, though, when they tried to go to home and away format. We're living around the world and traveling. COVID saved Overwatch League for like 3 years. If COVID didn't hit, Overwatch League probably would have fell apart by like 2021 or 2022. At least it made it a little bit further. At least it made it an extra year or two. Really? Absolutely. Do you know, as somebody who worked in it, do you know how all the players were? Like, they were so, like, they were just, we were like 2 months into the season and they were already cooked. They were so, like, I remember they were gearing up, Boston was gearing up for a more than month-long tour in China. And they were just beat. They just did not want to go. They were like, we just came back from like 3 trips. Now we're going to have to go and spend a month and a half in China. This is going to be so bad. And like, listen, the homestand sold out really well the year before because they only happened once or twice or 3 times a year. But trying to sell stadiums for an event, for a game, multiple times, like because it was every game, we're talking 50 plus games a year, was almost impossible. Were they even paid well? Oh, that's that one could go really deep. That's not my place to speak on, but I've heard of some horrible things that they did. But across the board, it depends on who you were. Some people made out like bandits because they went to orgs that, you know, they had a name and like they got paid really. Ask Siegel. Go ask one of them. I think they're much more willing to speak on it than me. Because I wasn't I technically was never a player. I never technically had those conversations. Technically, they did some things they should not have done. Ask SQC. I think is it public? I mean, I remember it being public knowledge. He talked about it on stream, but I don't know how well known it is at this point because this is like 2018. I remember XQC on stream talking about he lost money from going on Overwatch League because he had to move and then eventually got like kicked out and all that other stuff. Actually, well, yeah, did he get banned? No, did he get banned? I don't even remember actually. No, I might be wrong on that one actually. I know he did get let go, obviously. Regardless, though, no. The short answer is no. The short answer is no. The long answer is it's way worse than you probably imagine. But regardless, though, they just needed to give it more time. They needed to take it slow. The LA format was phenomenal. It was peak, and they f***ed up.
To compete against each other. There was this belief, this energy, that the OWL was going to break the stigma on competitive video games as being weird
And I just want to tell you, from my experience, it all came top down. All the bad shit was top down. I promise you.
bring it into the mainstream. Bobby even convinced his friends to invest. Guys like Patriots owner Robert Kraft, Arsenal and Denver Nuggets owner Stan Kroenke, NetEase invested in the Shanghai Dragons, even Elon Musk was at investor meetings. In short, the OWL had
Knowers, no. Knowers, no.
was at investor meetings. In short, the OWL had legitimacy from real sports,
Knowers,
the backing of
knowers
multiple
are
billionaires
smiling.
and multinational corporations, and the OWL instantly became the poster boy for the upcoming esports boom. For many, it looked like Blizzard just reclaimed their throne and were ready to take back what they'd lost. But there was one part of the equation that we didn't factor in. Bobby's smudgy little finger
Flats, didn't you get to take a shit in Tom Brady's toilet, though? Technically, yes. Technically, yes. That did happen. Not
prints
wrong.
all over the game. Despite releasing an amazing game to diehard fans, the game was full of microtransactions, drip-fed content, loot boxes so predatory, they were banned under certain countries' gambling laws.
And now here we are in the year of 2025, and everyone has been like, well, actually, sorry, let's go 2024. Everyone was like, bring back loot boxes. 2022, bring back loot boxes. 2023, bring back loot boxes. 2025, loot boxes are back. Yeah!
They were banned under certain
April 25th. Oh, I'm in the way. April 25th, 2018.
countries' gambling laws. Plus, the insane $20 million price tag to buy an OWL.
And also, if you are not in the Overwatch space, let's say you come from Rivals, you come from any other game, you don't actually understand how bad people have been begging for loot boxes. Like at least a Reddit post a week were begging for loot boxes back. At least a week. Okay? It's crazy how fast history changes.
franchise spot was unheard of and was something only Bobby's billionaire friends would be able to afford. So much of the game felt like it was focused on money, 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 and as the months dragged on, it seemed like the devs were more concerned with releasing cosmetics than fixing problems with the actual game.
Oh, not
Soon,
the goats.
it became apparent that the golden age of Blizzard was a bygone era. And although Overwatch thrived for many years, many believed the game never realized its full potential. And sadly, there wouldn't be another chance at redemption, because Blizzard was about to get hit with a series of lawsuits from which they would never recover. In 2017,
it's that one.
Blizzard employees, old and new, started voicing their concerns, some in open letters, some to the media, and some in lawsuits describing the work environment as being misogynistic, unsafe, and similar to that of a frat house. Front and center were allegations against Bobby Kotick himself, claiming that he was aware of misconduct in the company and helped to cover it up, which really shouldn't come as a surprise.
That's what
There's
I
a
think in
paper
40
trail
months.
of terrible behavior
Retro,
perpetrated
I
by
think it's 76
Kotick,
months.
stretching as far back as he's been around. In 2006, he allegedly threatened to have an employee killed.
Yeah.
In 2020,
Yeah, this shit was all horrible. It's why, like, one of the cringiest things is when people come in my chat or talk about stuff and they're like, or I'll give you a good example. I'll give you the most tame example, right? I'll give you the tame example. It's the reason why they changed the in-game name of Cass from McCree to Cass, right? Like, it's because of this. It's always like some edgy 16-year-old who doesn't know any of this of the history, and it's just like, oh, I just call it that because that's what it is. Ha ha ha. And it's like, dude, if you actually like read the story, it's like, damn, dude, you really are an asshole if you stand on that one. That's crazy. And I've heard every argument under the sun before you even start. This whole thing was so.
Two, Kotick tried to buy Kotaku and PC Gamer in an effort to, quote, change the public narrative. Anyway, the allegations started piling up, and it eventually reached a breaking point in 2018, when Mike Morhaime stepped down as the CEO of Blizzard after 27 years of service. This was closely followed by several other long-standing.
Yeah, now his new game just is coming out, Wildgate, right? And I actually played it. It's fun. I'm not like, it's like kind of like Sea of Thieves in space, kind of thing. It's fun. But yeah, it's cool that they're moving on to try to make other games. And see if these type of games are not really my type of game, but I hope it does well because
Blizzard employees.
I think they
doing the
deserve
same.
it.
This included Overwatch head writer Michael Chu, Blizzard co-founder Frank Pierce, and someone who will be very important later on in the story. His name was Ray Gresco, a seasoned veteran at Blizzard who served as
is this
chief
the
design
Netflix,
officer and the head
the guy it's
producer
over?
for Overwatch. He was recognized for his pivotal role in lifting the Titan team from a slump, inspiring them to transform into a powerhouse group that ultimately
Hold up, I need to let this. You need lock in really quick. This is gonna be very important.
will be very important later on in the story. His name was Ray Gresco, a seasoned veteran at Blizzard who served as chief design officer and the head producer for Overwatch. He was recognized for his pivotal role in lifting the Titan team from a slump, inspiring them to transform into a powerhouse group that ultimately brought Overwatch to life. His departure meant one of Blizzard's great leaders was now no longer with the company. With two of Blizzard's founders out of the picture, the future of the company hung in the balance. Meanwhile,
So I want to say really quick, there's a reason why when back in 2022/2023, when a bunch of layoffs happened for Overwatch, I was really annoyed because every time the Overwatch team started to get their their legs underneath them with a good team, people would leave or people would get laid off. This is why it's such a bad thing, because people sometimes forget games are made by people. And if you keep losing people over and over and over, the game is going to be terrible. That's what happens. The reason why today Overwatch is looking better than ever is because they haven't had layoffs for a while and they've had the same team and like nobody's really left. Only like one or two people has left. I think Jared might have left recently. But other than that though, like mostly they've stayed together. Like the hero design team has been mostly together. Most of Aaron's, I think, is all still together. Community has still been mostly together from like the launch, like very few changes, like overall. And it's like they still got a lot of work to do, but having good people leave is the biggest problems, right? That's how shit goes south.
none of the legal troubles stuck to Bobby Kotick personally. And despite board members being aware of his inappropriate behavior and voicing their concerns, Bobby had a clause in his contract that made it very, very expensive to get rid of him. So they just let him stay on as CEO. The gates of Blizzard were wide open, and no one was around to stop him. His first decree as king was layoffs. Major layoffs. Nearly 800 Activision Blizzard employees were terminated, and almost overnight, board meetings were dominated by sales and marketing execs rather than creatives. It was so bad that a few years later, Jeff Kaplan, the lead director of Overwatch, left the company after butting heads with Suits over his vision for Overwatch 2. He wanted more time to develop the game's PvE and wanted to ensure that he was creating something new and innovative for the sequel of one of the biggest games of the decade, but he was told that it wouldn't be financially viable to delay development. So,
you know what really sucks is when the worst person you know is right. Bobby was right about that one. Jeff did make a bad decision. Jeff's bad decisions were he wanted to keep the team small, and he also wanted to develop Overwatch 2 PvP and PvE at the same time. And that's why it was taking so long, and then also COVID. And like if you've never heard the story, basically Bobby wanted to expand the Overwatch team dramatically. That way they could work on the PvE while also working on Overwatch 1 while also working on Overwatch 2 PvP way back in like 2020. Jeff said no. He wanted to have a small team, or actually even 2019, wanted to have a small team work on the game. That's why it was taking so long. And that's why I didn't feel like it got very far. And also they were right. It didn't sell. It wasn't going to sell. With Overwatch 2 going free to play, the game needed to be, the PvE needed to be free to play. You know what I mean? Unfortunately. That's just the way it is.
He ended up leaving the project altogether. As the clouds over the kingdom darkened, those fleeing the chaos sought refuge in unlikely places. Some went to other companies, some started their own, and although hope was fading for these wandering souls, a new era was beginning to coalesce. In 2018, Hamilton Chu, the executive producer for Hearthstone, was saddened by the fact that he was spending more time talking to shareholders than working on his game. Stuck in a funk, he received a phone call out of the blue from an old friend. It was Mr. Jay Ong, the ex-Blizzard exec we mentioned earlier, who is now the head of Marvel Games. In this phone call, he basically said to Chu, "If you leave Blizzard, you can find a home at Marvel. Chu quickly relayed this message to Hearthstone game director Ben Brode. They began daydreaming about starting something new, something which would allow them to get back into the heart of game development. That's not to say they didn't love their jobs. When describing Brode, former Blizzard engineer Brian Schwab said, quote, "He would have stayed on Hearthstone until the sun death of the universe."
Wait, is this how Marvel Snap came together?
That's how much
No
he loved
shot.
Blizzard. But these creatives were forced to conduct marketing strategy meetings and create shareholder value instead of building awesome games. And when that happens, well, people won't stick around for long. Brode and Chu departed Blizzard in 2018 to start their own gaming studio, and it was a big deal. The hype surrounding Second Dinner was a turning point for many reasons. The first is that Jae-yong wasn't kidding about making games for Marvel, and in a few short years, the team at Second Dinner would release Marvel Snap, now one of the biggest Hearth games in the world and a direct competitor to Hearthstone. The second is how they got funding to start up. Right out of the gate, Second Dinner received $30 million in investment from NetEase. Yeah, that NetEase.
Oh boy.
This is problematic for Blizzard. Not only was NetEase their Chinese publisher, but they also developed games for Blizzard like Diablo Immortal. To invest millions of dollars into ex-Blizzard employees for them to create a game that was in direct competition with one of their biggest IPs was a blatant attack to their partnership and would irreparably damage their relationship. And it wasn't the first time that something like this had happened.
Rift between gaming giants shows toll of China's economic
Also in
crackdown.
2018, NetEase invested $100 million into Bungie, the creators of Destiny 2, a game that was, at the time, on Activision's catalog of games. In 2019, NetEase signed a contract with Marvel to create a series of films, comic books, and of course, video games, creating Marvel Super War and Marvel Duel over the next couple of years. Plus, it didn't go unnoticed that this Marvel contract was kind of similar to the one Activision lost back in 2014. But why would they do this? In the years leading to their fallout, the Chinese government was cracking down on video games, banning children from playing on weekdays, as well as imposing new regulations for publishers to follow. NetEase was cited as, quote, feeling the pressure, but Activision was passive at best when it came to meeting these guidelines.
Not my problem.
Requests for information on revenue? No. Tell us about your business operations? No. Help us out even a little bit? No. To Activision, this was some sort of ploy from NetEase to get more money out of them. To NetEase, it was disruptive and threatened the whole partnership, and all of it was made significantly worse by the conduct of Bobby.
Wait, remember earlier how I was saying it was probably not just like a big disagreement, it was just disrespectful? That's why they publicly said like, F you when they dissolved? Wait, this is why. Wait, this is actually why.
Many at NetEase alleged that he was incredibly difficult to work with, not just as a business partner, but personally as well. Simon Zhu, president of partnerships at NetEase, following a particular
NetEase boss blames damage done by a jerk for Activision shutdown of World of Warcraft and Overwatch in China. Feels terrible for players who lived in those worlds. Wait, I've never seen this.
Meeting said, quote, developers and gamers will have a whole new level of understanding of how much damage a jerk can make.
One day, when what has happened behind the scenes could be told, developers and gamers will have a whole new level of understanding of how much damage a jerk can make. Wait a second. I made videos about that and I was called the biggest shill. And I said, you know, honestly, one guy has kind of ruined most of this shit over years. And it was like, no, the game sucked. You're just glazing, shill. Nah, bitch. We were right. Did you call him a jerk, though? I called him worse than that.
Tensions came to a head in 2022 after
Wait a
a
second.
mistranslation during a meeting where Activision felt like they were being threatened. Soon after, the partnership ended, meaning at the start of 2023, Blizzard games like World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Overwatch 2 were no longer available in China. Understandably, people didn't handle it well.
They literally did destroy it. Okay, I did not
Meaning at the start of 2023,
make that up.
Blizzard games
I did
like
not
World of Warcraft,
hallucinate.
Hearthstone, and Overwatch 2 were no longer available in China. Understandably, people didn't handle it well.
Now I understand.
And then the divorce got messy, and even messier. However, no longer burdened by this toxic relationship, NetEase was able to focus on developing a new game, one that would fill the hole left by the abysmal release of Overwatch 2 in 2023. You guessed it, Marvel Rivals.
Show me that you are still the only one for me. I'll be waiting for you.
This
Oh,
was
boy.
the hero shooter fans were waiting for. After the success of Marvel's Snap, news that a free-to-play hero shooter using
all
the Marvel
comes
IP was
full
under development
circle.
had basically the entire gaming industry frothing at the mouth.
I got goosebumps right now, dude.
The art style was right out of
anything
a
that's
comic
Tier
book.
1?
The characters looked
How's it rolling
amazing.
time?
The gameplay was oddly similar to Overwatch, but with more characters, more complexity, and way more players. In its first month, Marvel Rivals grossed more than $130 million. Not bad for a free-to-play game. It surpassed 10 million unique players, peaking at nearly 500,000 concurrent players on Steam at launch, and has kept that momentum months later, still averaging hundreds of thousands of unique players to this day. But that leaves a
I actually haven't looked at season 2's to see if it spiked up close to season 1. Let me remind me to do that after this.
NetEase and Marvel Games joining forces was big, but who are the actual people who made it all possible? The first name that comes to mind is Ray Gresco, the head producer of Overwatch 1 we mentioned earlier, who left Blizzard in 2019.
The head producer of Overwatch 1.
He started a video game consulting firm called Blue Silver Studios. One of their clients is listed as Disney, as in the owner of Marvel Games.
Wait, Dreamhaven.
And in 2024, Gresco was appointed
That's
as
the Wild Game
senior
makers.
VP, head of product and development for Disney Games. Given the uncanny resemblance of Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, it's hard to believe that Gresco didn't bring some of that creative Overwatch juice to his consulting with Disney. But the person that really was the mastermind behind it all was Jay Ong. He had come a long way since leaving Blizzard in 2014, and is now one of the big players at Disney Game. Throughout the years, his drive to foster an awesome work culture won the trust of ex-Blizzard veterans and NetEase. And who knew a focus on creating great games instead of just profits would end up making you profitable.
Yeah,
So-
true.
Just took a lot of hits. By October 2023, Activision
Goodbye.
Blizzard was acquired by Microsoft for $75 billion. Their ruined castle was just repoed and moved to the Microsoft campus in Redmond, Washington. And Bobby Kotick? Well, he was somehow able to convince Microsoft to buy it all. And he was so beloved by the new company that they paid him $400 million just to step down. So, Bobby came out of this with what he loves most: money. But with nothing left to prey on, he spends his days sharing conspiracy theories on how unions were the reason for his downfall.
I can tell you exactly what happened. So the Communication Workers of America, because they started looking at technology, they kept closing the Department of Affairs because they represented unions. I didn't realize the government until the EEOC into a company because we pay well, we have great benefits.
Holy
Marvel
shit.
and NetEase have built an amazing
Holy shit. The fact that I've never heard of that and I didn't even know that existed, I couldn't even do the conspiracy theory pipeline well, that's crazy.
partnership. And all in all, Marvel Rivals looks like it's here to stay. They have the player base, they have the investments, and they have an amazing team that cares about the community and regularly releasing content. With Bobby out of the picture, NetEase and Blizzard rekindled their partnership. And in 2014, games like World of Warcraft returned to China. As 2025 unfolds, it's uncertain what awaits the gaming industry. Everywhere we look, the corruptive power of greed continues to infiltrate great kingdoms. But as long as there are heroes that stand for quality first, there will always be hope for great games to come.
Damn, that hits a little hard right now. Okay, NetEase confirms Marvel Rivals layoffs because cuts were made to optimize development and efficiency for the game. Marvel Rivals is a big hit, but apparently that doesn't matter. Didn't this end up coming out that it was only like 6 people? Because it was like the Seattle, it was supposed to be like their Seattle office, but it was like literally like 6 people. Like, don't get me wrong, that's not a good thing, but like, I'm pretty sure that was just like a headline. Like, people were like, lays off entire Seattle office. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not telling you it's a good thing. Don't misconstrue me. But that's different. Like, there would not be headlines saying like, Marvel Rivals lays off 6 people. You know what I mean? People would be like, okay, like, I get it. Like, stuff happened, right? But like, I think that might have been just like a, you know, headline. All right, that was actually a gas video. I knew that was going to be good. But you know, to this day, there's a reason why we sit here and we go, hey, yo, Overwatch could have had its time, but it kept getting shot in the foot by literally one person. And that's not shill, that's not anything, that's a literally objective fact. Oh yeah, the Steam charts thing, let me check. So it peaked out, started a new season at 303,000, which is significantly less than season 1.5. It's still very good, but it's about 100,000 people less. And don't get me wrong, nothing lasts forever, right? Like, you're never going to be able to keep it there forever. It is dropped quite significantly. That is undeniable. The question is, though, with the format swap, or sorry, the swap that they made to every month new heroes come out, but that's not going to be for a while. It's, I think, season 3, right? So that's like, is it season 3? It's like season 3, and so like that means it'll be in like 3 months from now. So what, like July? Yeah, probably in like July. Will it still hold for that long? Probably. But, you know, thinking about it, the reason they probably made the swap to pumping really hard, like new heroes like every month, is because probably someone made the call. Like, someone definitely made the call on their side and said, hey, we've lost half our player base in a few months. Like, let's see if we can spark this back up, because like, real talk, a game like Marvel Rivals doesn't come around very often. The last game that I think hit as hard as Rivals was Valorant. When I say that, I mean like multiplayer game that lasts a long time. Things that I think of is like 2016 Overwatch, 2018 Fortnite, 2019 Apex, 2020 Valorant, and then what next? Apex definitely hit hard. Warzone. Oh, Warzone. 2020 Warzone, for sure. The finals did not hit this hard. Sorry. Nothing against the finals there. It did not hit as hard as Marvel Rivals. You are crazy. So, the point I was trying to make is a game like this doesn't come around very often. And considering how much money it was probably making, like printing, you want to make as much money as you can. And so, you know what probably happened? They probably just turned all the burners on as high as they can. They're like, pump is everything we've got as fast as we can. And that might cause problems like 2 years from now down the line if they run out of content, or a year from now, like run out of content. And when I run out of content, I don't mean like they've run out of characters. I mean like the dev time to make those characters, right? Like they might release more broken. They might release more unfinished, less polished, right? That being said, though, if in that short term they're able to pile up billions or millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, it's worth it for them, because putting it over long term and making much less wouldn't make as much sense for them than putting it shorter, hitting really hard, maximizing, juicing it as much as they can while also making it good. And then in the long term, when it slows back down and like evens off as a player base, like it like hits like what'll be its sustained level, then they can kind of figure that out. You know what I mean? But like keep riding the red hot that they've been on.